Captain Lee Minho's hands trembled as he held onto the ship's controls. The Harmony was moving through the dark emptiness of space when suddenly every alarm on the bridge started screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere, making the whole room look like it was on fire. "What the hell is going on?" Minho shouted over the noise. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. He had been flying ships for 15 years, but he had never heard the scanners make sounds like this. Park. Jisoo, who was sitting at the communications desk, looked like she had seen a ghost. Her face was completely white, and her hands were shaking as she pressed buttons on her control panel. "Captain, this is impossible," she whispered, then louder. "Sir, we're getting a distress call from the Kepler 442 system." "So what?" "We get distress calls all the time," said Kim Tae-hyung from the back of the bridge. He was the ship's engineer, a big guy with grease always under his fingernails. But even he stopped working when he heard Jisoo's next words. "Captain, the signal, it's human. It's definitely coming from humans." The entire bridge went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Even the ship's engines seemed to get quieter, like they were afraid to make noise. Minho felt his stomach drop to his feet. "That's not possible, Jisoo. Run the scan again. There has to be a mistake." 3 months ago, the Vorthak Empire had completely destroyed the Kepler 442 system. The Vorthaks were the most terrifying aliens in the galaxy. They were huge, with skin like black metal and eyes that glowed red in the dark. When they attacked a planet, nothing survived. Not people, not animals, not even the grass. They burned everything until there was nothing left but ash and empty space. Every human colony in that system had been wiped out. The Galactic Council had even put up warning signs telling everyone to stay away. It was dead space now, a graveyard floating in the darkness. Tae-hyung was already running every test he could think of. His fingers flew over his computer keyboard, checking and double-checking everything. "Captain, I've run the diagnostics 5 times. The signal is real. It's definitely human, but—" He stopped and looked confused. "Sir, something's weird about it. The technology creating this signal is way more advanced than anything we have on Earth." "More advanced? How is that possible?" Minho asked. "Human technology was good, but it wasn't the best in the galaxy. The Zephyrians had energy weapons that could destroy entire moons. The crystalline species could build ships that repaired themselves. Humans were tough and smart, but they weren't known for having the most advanced technology." Jisoo was still listening to the signal through her headphones. "Captain, there's more. I'm picking up at least 50,000 human life signs on the planet's surface. And they're not just alive, they're thriving." 50,000? Minho couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Jisoo, that's impossible. The Vorthaks don't leave survivors. Ever. They've been conquering planets for 300 years, and no one has ever survived their attacks." The ship's computer started beeping with more information. On the main screen, they could see a map of the Kepler 442 system. Where there should have been nothing but empty space and dead planets, the sensors were showing something incredible. There were energy readings, signs of life, and what looked like massive structures floating in space. "Captain," Tae-hyung said, his voice full of amazement, "I'm seeing orbital platforms around the planet, big ones, and the energy output, it's off the charts. Whatever's down there is using more power than some entire star systems." Minho looked at his crew. These were good people, smart people. Jisoo had been working on spaceships since she was 16. Tae-hyung could fix any machine in the galaxy with his eyes closed. If they said something was impossible, it probably was. But the evidence was right there in front of them. "Captain," Jisoo said quietly, "what if the humans down there didn't just survive the Vorthak attack? What if they won?" The idea was crazy. No one beat the Vorthaks in a fight. Their empire controlled a quarter of the galaxy. Their ships were the size of cities, and their weapons could crack planets in half. The idea that a human colony could not only survive but actually defeat them was like saying a mouse could beat a dragon. But something had happened in the Kepler 442 system. Something that had made the most feared empire in the galaxy pack up and leave. Minho made the decision that would change everything. "Set course for Kepler 442. Maximum warp. If there are humans down there, we need to know how they survived." As the Harmony jumped into hyperspace, streaking through space faster than light, None of them realized they were about to discover the secret that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. When the Harmony came out of hyperspace, Captain Lee Minho thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. The view screen lit up with something that shouldn't exist, something that made his brain hurt just trying to understand it. "Holy," Tae-hyung whispered from his station, then caught himself before finishing the curse. But everyone on the bridge was thinking the same thing. Where there should have been nothing but dead rock and empty space, there was a paradise. The planet Kepler 442b was covered in gleaming cities that looked like they were made of liquid silver and gold. Massive towers stretched up into the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float in midair. Gardens and parks filled with green plants covered the spaces between buildings, making the whole planet look like a jewel floating in space. But that wasn't the most shocking part. Floating around the planet like a ring of death were the remains of what had once been the most powerful war fleet in the galaxy. Hundreds of Vorthak battleships, each one the size of a small city, were now nothing but twisted metal and broken dreams. Some were split completely in half. Others looked like they had been crushed by a giant fist. A few were so badly damaged that they were barely recognizable as ships at all. "Captain," said Choi Hee-jin, the ship's scientist who studied alien life forms. Her voice was shaking with excitement and fear. "I'm reading over 50,000 human life signatures on the surface. But that's not all. The buildings down there, they're not just advanced. They're using technology I've never seen before." Jisoo was frantically working at her communication station, trying to make sense of what the sensors were telling her. "Sir, the energy readings from those cities are incredible. Each building is producing more power than our entire ship. And those shields around the planet—" She pointed at the view screen, where shimmering barriers of light danced around them, whirled like the northern lights. "They're not just for protection. They're actually feeding energy back into the planet's ecosystem." Minho rubbed his eyes, hoping that when he opened them, everything would make sense again, but the impossible sight was still there. "Hyejin, how long would it take to build cities like that?" "Captain, with our current technology? Maybe 50 years if we had unlimited resources and the best engineers in the galaxy working non-stop." But these colonists only had 3 months since the Vorthak attack. Tae-hyung was scanning the wreckage of the alien fleet. "Captain, you need to see this. These Vorthak ships, they weren't just destroyed. Look at this." He put an image on the main screen showing one of the battleships. "See those holes? They're perfectly round, like something punched right through their armor. Vorthak ships have the strongest shields in the galaxy. Nothing should be able to cut through them like butter." Before anyone could respond, every screen on the bridge lit up with an incoming transmission. The image that appeared showed a woman with kind eyes and a confident smile. She was wearing clothes that looked comfortable, but were made from materials that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. "Greetings, Harmony," the woman said in perfect, unaccented English. "I am Yoon Soo-jin, administrator of New Eden Colony. We've been monitoring your approach since you entered our system. Welcome." Minho felt his mouth hanging open. This woman looked completely normal, like someone he might meet at a coffee shop on Earth. But behind her, through a window, he could see one of those impossible floating cities, with vehicles that moved through the air like fish swimming through water. "Administrator Yoon," Minho managed to say, "this is Captain Lee Minho of the research vessel Harmony. We thought this system was dead. The Vorthak Empire destroyed everything here 3 months ago." Soo-jin's smile grew wider. "Oh, they certainly tried, Captain. May I request permission to come aboard your ship? I believe we have much to discuss about humanity's future among the stars." The bridge crew all looked at each other with expressions of complete confusion. This was definitely not what any of them had expected to find. "Permission granted," Minho said, though he felt like he was in a dream. "But, Administrator, I have to ask, how did you survive the Vorthak assault? No one has ever survived when they decide to destroy a planet." There was a pause, and Soo-jin's expression changed slightly. Her smile became something different, something that reminded Minho of a predator that had just spotted its prey. "Survive, Captain," she said, her voice carrying a tone that made chills run down his spine. "We didn't just survive. We thrived, we learned, we adapted, and we discovered something about humanity that even we didn't know." She gestured to something off-screen, and suddenly the view screen showed a close-up of one of the destroyed Vorthak battleships. The Vorthaks have been the galaxy's bullies for 3 centuries, Captain. They've conquered thousands of worlds and destroyed countless civilizations. But they made one critical mistake when they came here. What mistake? Jisoo asked, completely fascinated despite her fear. Sujin's smile became almost frightening in its confidence. They underestimated what happens when you back humans into a corner. They thought they were hunting sheep, Captain. Instead, they woke up sleeping dragons. And now we're going to teach the entire galaxy what humans are truly capable of when we stop holding back. The briefing room on the Harmony had never felt so small. Administrator Yoon Soo-jin sat across from Captain Minho and his crew, but she wasn't alone. 2 other people had beamed over from the colony, and they looked just as impossible as everything else about this situation. Kang Dong-hyun was a tall, thin man, with eyes that seemed to see everything at once. His clothes were made from the same shimmering material as Soo-jin's, but what really caught everyone's attention were the small devices floating around his shoulders like tiny metal butterflies. They moved on their own, scanning everything in. The room with beams of soft blue light. Imnayon looked like she could tear apart a Vorthak warrior with her bare hands. She was built like a soldier, but her uniform was unlike anything in any military manual. It seemed to shift and change color depending on how the light hit it, and there were patterns moving across the fabric that looked almost alive. "Before we begin," Soo-jin said, waving her hand over the briefing table, "let me show you what really happened during the Vorthak attack." The table suddenly came to life. A 3-dimensional image appeared in the air above it, showing the New Eden colony, as it had been 3 months ago. It looked like any other human settlement. Basic buildings, farming areas, and maybe 10,000 people trying to make a new life on a distant world. "We were just another frontier colony," Dong-hyun explained, his voice calm but intense. "Basic technology, basic defenses. When the Vorthak fleet arrived, we should have been wiped out in minutes." The hologram changed, showing massive black ships appearing in space around the planet. Even in miniature, the Vorthak battleships looked terrifying. Each one bristled with weapons that could level entire cities. 67 ships, Naeon said, pointing at the display. The largest Vorthak assault force ever assembled. They didn't just want to destroy us. They wanted to make an example of us, to show the galaxy what happened to humans who tried to expand too far into their territory. Jisoo leaned forward, fascinated despite her fear. "What did you do? How do you hide from ships like that?" Soo-jin smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. "We didn't hide, Officer Park. We watched, we learned, and we did something that no other species in the galaxy has ever done when facing the Vorthaks." The hologram shifted again, showing the first attack. Beams of energy erupted from the Vorthak, ships striking the colony's shields. But instead of the shields failing and the colony being destroyed, something strange happened. "Look closely," Dong-hyun said, manipulating the display to zoom in on the moment of impact. "See how our shields don't just absorb the energy? They're analyzing it, breaking it down into its component parts, learning how it works." Taehyung's mouth fell open. "That's impossible. Energy weapons don't work that way. You can't just study them while they're trying to kill you." "That's where you're wrong," Naeon said, standing up and walking around the table. "Every other species in the galaxy tries to build stronger defenses to stop attacks. Humans, we build smarter defenses that learn from attacks." The hologram continued showing the battle, but it wasn't going the way anyone expected. After the first wave of attacks, the human colony's defenses started changing. The shields became more efficient. The defensive weapons began firing back, with increasing accuracy. "Within 6 hours," Soo-jin continued, "our computers had completely reverse-engineered their plasma cannons. Within 12 hours, we had improved on the design. By the end of the first day, our weapons were more powerful than theirs." "But that's not the best part," Dong-hyun added, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Show them what happened on day 3. The hologram shifted to show something that made everyone in the room gasp. Human ships were rising from the planet's surface, but they weren't built from human technology. They looked like Vorthak vessels, but sleeker, faster, and covered with weapons that pulsed with energy. "You built ships?" Minho asked, his voice barely a whisper. We didn't just build them, Nyan said proudly. We improved them. Every piece of Vorthak technology we encountered, we made it better. Their shields that could deflect anything. We created shields that could redirect energy attacks back at the enemy. Their weapons that could pierce any armor. We developed armor that got stronger the more it was hit. Hyojin was frantically taking notes on her tablet. This is incredible. You're describing adaptive technology that changes in real time. The computational power required would be enormous. That's the thing about humans, Sujin said, leaning back in her chair. When other species encounter a problem, they try to overpower it. When humans encounter a problem, we understand it, we learn from it, and then we make it part of ourselves. The hologram showed the final day of the battle, but it wasn't really a battle anymore. It was a rout. Human ships, now superior to anything. The Vorthaks were systematically destroying the enemy fleet. The great Vorthak battleships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were being torn apart by weapons they had never seen before. The surviving Vorthak ships didn't retreat, Nyan said quietly. They fled in complete terror. Their commanders sent a message to their empire saying that humanity had become something they couldn't understand or fight. Jisoo shook her head in amazement. No species has ever reverse-engineered Vorthak technology. Their computers are supposed to be unhackable. Donghyun laughed, and the floating devices around his shoulders seemed to pulse with amusement. That's because no other species thinks like humans do. We don't just try to break their codes. We learn to think like they think. Then we think better. The Vorthak Empire has ruled through fear and superior technology for 300 years, Sujin concluded. But they made one critical mistake. They assumed that humans would react like every other species they'd conquered. They thought we would panic, fight desperately, and die bravely. Instead, Nyan added with a grin that was both beautiful and terrifying, we learned from their attacks, improved on their technology, and showed them what humans do when we stop playing defense and start playing to win. The hologram faded, leaving the room in stunned silence. Finally, Minho found his voice. What happens now? Sujin's expression became serious. Now, Captain, we teach the rest of humanity what we've learned. Because the Vorthaks aren't the only threat out there. And it's time for humans to stop being the galaxy's underdogs. The briefing room door slid open with a soft hiss, and 2 more people walked in. Captain Minho was starting to feel like his small research ship was being invaded by superhumans. Everyone from New Eden Colony seemed to carry themselves with a confidence that bordered on supernatural. Bai Suho was a man who looked like he could negotiate peace between warring gods. His presence filled the room even though he wasn't particularly tall or imposing. When he smiled, it felt like he knew secrets that could change the universe. Behind him walked Song Minjae, a woman whose eyes seemed to be constantly calculating battle strategies even while having a casual conversation. Captain Lee, Suho said, his voice smooth as silk, I hope Administrator Sujin has given you a good introduction to what we've accomplished here, but what you've seen so far is just the beginning. He waved his hand over the briefing table, and the holographic display that had been showing their battle with the Vorthaks disappeared. In its place, a massive 3-dimensional map of the entire galaxy materialized above the table. Everyone in the room gasped. The galaxy looked different than any map they had ever seen. Huge sections were marked in red, showing Vorthak territory that stretched across thousands of star systems. Blue areas marked the domains of other alien empires, the crystal-based Zephyrians with their energy weapons, the hive-minded Krell with their swarm ships, and dozens of other species that had carved up the galaxy between them. But scattered throughout the map, like tiny golden stars, were new markers that hadn't been there before. 17 human colonies, Suho said, pointing to the golden dots, have reported what the Galactic Council is calling impossible developments in the past 3 months. From the Centauri reaches all the way out to the Outer Rim territories, something incredible is happening to humanity. Song Minjae stepped forward and touched one of the golden markers. The display zoomed in to show a star system that should have been under Krell control. The colony on Proxima 7 was attacked by a Krell swarm fleet 6 weeks ago, 12,000 bioships, each one designed to strip a planet bare of all life. What happened? Taehyung asked, though he was starting to suspect he knew the answer. Tabadeko. Colonists didn't just survive, Minjay continued with a grin. They figured out how Krell bioships communicate with each other. Within days, they had taken control of the entire swarm and turned it into a defensive fleet. She touched another marker, and the display shifted to show a different system. The mining colony on Kepler 186f was being slowly poisoned by Zephyrian energy weapons that were designed to make the planet uninhabitable for humans. Instead of evacuating, the colonists absorbed the energy and used it to terraform their entire world in 3 weeks. What had been a barren rock became a garden paradise. Hyejin was frantically taking notes, but her hands were shaking so much she could barely write. This is impossible. The energy requirements alone. How are colonists with basic equipment doing things that should require massive industrial complexes? That's the point, Suho said, manipulating the display to show more colonies. We're not using basic equipment anymore. Every time an alien species attacks us, we don't just defend ourselves. We learn their technology, we improve it, and we share those improvements with every other human colony in the galaxy. The map showed golden lines connecting all the human colonies, pulsing with data transfers that were happening faster than light. Information, technology, and innovations were being shared across the galaxy in real time. "Captain," said a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Han Yuna entering the room. She was younger than the others, but she carried herself with the same impossible confidence. "I'm the Cultural Exchange Director for New Eden, and I've been monitoring communications from the Galactic Council. They're terrified." She joined the group around the holographic map and pointed to the center of the galaxy, where a massive space station orbited a neutron star. The Council headquarters has been receiving reports about human colonies for weeks. At first, they thought it was just exaggerated stories from frightened alien commanders, but now, the display shifted to show communication logs from dozens of different alien species. Messages filled with words like impossible, unprecedented, and potentially dangerous. "The Vorthak Empire has formally requested protection from the Galactic Council," Yuna continued. "The most feared military force in the galaxy is asking for help because they're afraid of humans." Jisoo laughed, but it was a sound filled with disbelief rather than humor. "The Vorthaks are afraid of us? 3 months ago they were planning to wipe us out of the galaxy." 3 months ago, Minjay said seriously, "we were still thinking like prey. We were trying to hide from predators, build better shelters, and hope we could survive long enough to find a safe corner of the galaxy. But being attacked changed everything." Suho brought up a new section of the map, showing human colonies that had been developing new technologies at an incredible pace. "Look at what we've accomplished when we stopped being defensive. Colony ships that can travel faster than anything the Zephyrians ever built. Terraforming technology that turns dead. Worlds into paradises in weeks instead of centuries. Energy systems that make power from the quantum vacuum itself. But the most important thing," Yuna added, "is that we're sharing all of this. Every breakthrough, every innovation, every new discovery is being transmitted to every human colony, instantly. We're not just individual settlements anymore, we're becoming something new." Minho stared at the map, watching the golden connections between human colonies pulse with information. "What are we becoming?" "We're becoming what humans were always meant to be," Sujin said, speaking for the first time since the others had arrived. "We're becoming the species that doesn't just adapt to the galaxy. We're becoming the species that makes the galaxy adapt to us." Suho nodded and brought up one final image on the display. It showed the massive space station at the center of the galaxy, but now it was surrounded by ships from every major alien species. "Captain, the Galactic Council has called an emergency session for the first time in 200 years. Every major species in the galaxy will be represented. And for the first time in galactic history," Yuna added with a smile that was both beautiful and slightly scary, "they want to discuss not how to contain humanity, but how to learn from us." "Your arrival here wasn't a coincidence, Captain Lee," Sujin said, standing up from the table. "We've been monitoring Earth's communication networks. We know that your government is still thinking in terms of survival, of finding safe places to hide from alien threats. But hiding time is over." "We need you to carry a message back to Earth Command," Suho said. "It's time for humanity to stop thinking like the galaxy's underdogs. It's time for us to take our place as equals among the stars." Minjae gestured to the galaxy map one more time, where the golden markers were growing brighter and more numerous even as they watched. "Captain, what you're seeing is the birth of humanity's true galactic age, and we're just getting started."